It became quite already a tradition for quite a few years here in Morristown that I give between Pesach and Shavuos a Kavatayich Shir, and it's based on the idea that the Rebbe raised the issue of passing Kavatayich, the Dateline, the international Dateline, in the Yemei Sfira Saimer, and what happens to your count of the Sfira. You continue, and what happens with Shavuos, as we know, that Rebbe in the original days was Mesupik in it, and he went back and forth with all the Svaras, Lakan, but then until he finally substantiated and made it very clear that his shitta is that you follow by a personal count, and when you pass a Dateline, you have to continue your own count, not what the people on the other side count, and therefore Shvi is a different day as well, Shavuos is a different day as well. And therefore the Rebbe says it's not appropriate, since it looks like a klila that people should travel, keep a different day Shavuos than other people. So the most appropriate thing is not to travel through the international Dateline between Pesach and Shavuos. However, we're not going to discuss this Nakud of the Sikha, which is a discussion of its own, the Svaras of the Rebbe. We're going to discuss where is the point of the Dateline, which also happens to be a letter of the Rebbe. Do me a favor, there is a Shulchan Menachem on the table. Okay. So the Rebbe points, so there are many different shittas. The Rebbe refers to three main shittas. And the three main shittas we're going to discuss today. So before we start the idea of the shittas, let's acquaint ourselves with the idea of the map and the international Dateline and so on, and perhaps terminology that we're going to use for this. So we know that in the 1800s, 25 countries got together and convened, since commerce became more prominent in those days and people started traveling all over, and they decided where is going to be the international Dateline. Why is there a need for such a thing as an international Dateline? So we're going to demonstrate it on this map in a moment, but first we'll give some terminology before that. We know that anything which is a sphere, anything which goes around and around, as the Rambam says already in the beginning, is divided into 360 degrees. That's how it's used commonly. So we know the sun travels around the world, so every 4 minutes it goes through 1 degree. Every hour it goes through 15 degrees. Every 6 hours it goes through 90 degrees, and then 12 hours it goes through 180 degrees, and 18 hours 270 degrees, 24 hours it goes around 360 degrees. Now, if I would stand right in the middle, I will pick over here as, let's see where Yerushalayim is. Or let's take any point in the middle. Let's take any point right in the middle. Oh, here we are. Okay, so if somebody stands here any point in the middle, and I'm not blocking anybody, if somebody stands right in the middle. Now, that's east, going that way is east, even though our Kodesh is over here, but as far as this map is concerned, the top is north, the bottom is south, that side is east, and going this side, my left side, is west. Yeah? So now, if the sun is right where this pointer is, this is called 12 o'clock at this point. Now anything that is in the east means it happened already. The sun rises in the east, and when after it rises 6 hours later, it's right above the head, from 6 in the morning till 12 in the morning. The sun came from the east and it traveled for 6 hours, and it's standing right on top of your head, wherever you live. That's called your 12 o'clock. That's where the sun is, which means it came from the east, which means that 15 degrees earlier was 12 o'clock an hour ago. because that's where the sun was on top of their head an hour ago. 30 degrees earlier, which is 2 hours earlier, the sun was on top of the head of another person who lives there, which was 12 o'clock there. So we know that the right side of this map, that happened already. This side is not going to happen. It is going to happen. Now this is 12 o'clock. So if somebody asks you, what is there? Well, an hour earlier, what is that? That's 1 o'clock. Correct? Yeah, don't get confused. Because it happened already. The sun was there already. An hour ago was 12 o'clock there. Now it's 12 here. This was already an hour ago. This is 2 hours ago, so that's 2 o'clock already. So now you go this way. So now it's 12 here. Now it's 12 here. So let's pick a day. It's Tuesday. Tuesday, 12 o'clock. Now it's Tuesday, 12 o'clock here. Now it's Tuesday, 12 o'clock. Now it's Tuesday, 12 o'clock. It's Tuesday, 12, Tuesday. As further you go, you continue to make Tuesday, 12 o'clock. If you go the opposite way, you continue to say that it happened already. You will get to a point where two people come together. If you travel from this way, it didn't happen yet. It's going to happen. So you get to a point where you will call it 12 o'clock of Tuesday. If you go around, you'll go back, you will call that 12 o'clock of Monday, because it happened already 12 o'clock yesterday. So there's one point, because the sun goes around and around and around and around. There must be a point. If you would continue to go over here, okay? This is 12 o'clock Tuesday. Now it's 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 12 o'clock. And I'm going around. Every hour later it's 12 o'clock Tuesday here. 12 o'clock Tuesday here. 12 o'clock Tuesday here. When does it become next day? So obviously, if you continue to go to the west didn't happen yet. If the world would not be a sphere, if there will be a wall, right at the beginning over here will be a wall. This is where it starts. And there's a wall over here where it ends. Yeah? So when it got to the end, that's when you start all over a fresh new day. There's no such an end. Where is that end? It goes around and around, yeah? So if I'm standing at a certain point and I'm saying now it's 6 o'clock in the evening over here, and an hour later will be 6 o'clock in the evening of what? Today is Sunday. An hour later will be 6 o'clock in the evening over there of Sunday. An hour later will be 6 o'clock in the evening of Sunday there. How long will you say that? Till when? The oil of what will stay Sunday? An hour later, or if you go backwards, you'll say, an hour earlier is what? Is 7 o'clock of what? Of Sunday. An hour earlier than that is 7 o'clock of Sunday. Till when? 8 o'clock. An hour earlier, 9 o'clock of Sunday. When will it change? No. Where does it start? There's no point. Once you get past 12, so what? No, so you go back. You will come to a place where if you go this way, you'll call it one day, and if you go this way, you'll call it Wednesday, next day, So there must be a place where the emesis, where at this point starts the new day. At this point starts the new day. If I'm going to start walking here, I'm walking over here, and I'm going around the world 180 degrees later. I'm calling it what? It didn't happen yet, yeah? I'm walking from 12 o'clock in the middle of the day now. It's Sunday, I'm 12 o'clock in the middle of the day, and I'm walking around the half a world. I got there, I'm going west. I'm going 180 degrees. What do I call it? No, I made it in 1 minute. I made it in 1 minute. I'm walking around from 12 o'clock, but I took a plane. I took a plane, and I'm making it in a minute. I have a rocket. Yeah, I'm making it from 12 o'clock. I went around 180 degrees further west. What is there? It's from 12 o'clock middle of the night. It's 12 o'clock, 12 hours. It's 12 o'clock middle of the night of what? What do you call it? Didn't happen yet. I'm going west. I'm going this way. So that means only when it'll get there. So now, because I'm now 12 o'clock in the middle of the day of Sunday, there is 12 o'clock Motzei Shabbos, middle of the night. Yeah, correct? I'm turning around and I'm walking the same way with the same rocket. I'm flying the other way. And I got there 180 degrees. But this is that happened already. I'm going the way that happened already. So I got there. It's 12 o'clock midnight. What do I call that same spot? What do I call it? What do I call it? As it happened already. That's Sunday night, 12 o'clock. So it just depends the way you look at things, yeah? So obviously, because there's no beginning and no end, you're just repeating. It depends which way you go and repeat the same thing. There must be such a thing as an international dateline. So by the way, just for you to note, that the Menachem Kasher, he writes, Takya, that there's no such a thing. The Rebbe doesn't bring this shit to the cloud. He writes there's no such a thing as an international dateline. It all depends where people settled. If people came from the east, then they look towards the east. They keep people settled there from the west, and that's why he says there's no such a concept as an international dateline. There's no such a Teiridiki concept. It's Yidden lived in Eretz Yisrael. This is the main hemisphere where people lived in Europe and Asia. And if you traveled, if people who traveled going west, they always knew that that they're going later on. That means whatever was happened already. If they came from Eretz Yisrael and they went towards west, that means where they're going didn't happen yet. That's going to be the past day. If they traveled east, they know, this we're going to the direction where it happened already. So that means this happened already. This is the previous day. And wherever you are, whatever the people settled, the Goyim or whatever, this is basically whatever the people call that day is because that's how they traveled naturally there. The Rebbe doesn't bring that shita. And Migdalur from Rav Shachat, he has a huge sefer on this, and he discusses his barichas, why the Rebbe doesn't bring it, and why it's refuted, v'chulu. So, we'll discuss the three other shittas. But now, just for terminology, now we should know that if we're going to make now an international dateline right here in the middle, for example, or pick any of these lines that I made, you'll just don't be confused. Because usually, as I'm standing right over here, we have a right and a left on this map. If I go this way, which way am I going? I'm going east. East. If I'm going this way, I'm going west. But this is all if there's no line in the middle. And it's like I said, this is the end and that's the beginning. But if this is the beginning and the end, right over here in the middle, so I right now, this is east or west?
West. East.
This is on the map. On the map, this side is west. This side is east, correct? Yeah? But if we're calling this the international dateline, this is a wall. This is where the world begins, right here. So this is the world begins from the east or from the west? From the east. So this is where the world begins. This is the beginning of east. East continue. This starts east and it goes westward, and it goes around and it comes back over here, and then ends. The last drop of the world is right a second before here. So this line is this side of the line is called the eastern side, even though it's west. This side is the western side. This we need to remember the whole time of the shir, otherwise we'll get so confused we wouldn't know what we're doing. Yeah, I'm walking now. Which way? I'm walking east or west? Which way? Towards which way am I walking? I'm going which way? I'm walking east, but I'm on the western side. As soon as I walked through this line, I'm walking towards east, but as soon as I walked through the line, I bumped into the western hemisphere. Confused enough? Yes? But if we don't understand it well, we can't continue. So again, because the world is a sphere and it goes around and around and around, and it has no walls. So there's a beginning line. Now every kid knows that the line begins, the sun rises from where? From east. So east is kind of saying the word beginning. East means beginning, let's call it beginning. West means where the sun sets, which means the end. There's a beginning and an end, yeah? So the word east means beginning. The word west means the end. So yes, I stand over here, and I'm looking towards here. I'm looking towards the beginning, correct? Because I'm looking towards east. If I'm looking this way, I'm looking towards the end, towards the west, correct? But because the beginning is not there, because for some reason this is the international dateline, this is where the beginning is. So I'm looking towards east means only towards here. Even though I continue to look east here, but when I pass this line, I'm looking east, but I bumped in already into the end of the wall, because this is where the wall begins. From here, and it goes around till here. So if I pass through this line, I went from east to, the direction is from west to east, but I went over from the eastern hemisphere. This is the beginning. This is called the east is beginning, the eastern hemisphere, and I passed over into the end, which is the western hemisphere. I'm still walking east. My direction is east, but the wall is in the middle. So I passed over into yesterday. Okay, depending if it's shkia, huh? Or tomorrow. Yes, you're right. Not into yesterday, into tomorrow, because that's the end. This didn't happen yet. This is where the world begins. This is yesterday. This is yesterday. Didn't happen yet. Didn't happen yet. Yeah, this is going to happen. That's the end. Okay. Now let's begin. It's getting late. Yes. The reason why Kavatayich is not an issue only for Sfira Sohim and for Shavuos is because for Shabbos, we know when Shabbos is, if somebody travels from here to Chicago, he's also going to be missing an hour or adding an hour to his day. Because the Mokim is Kiveya. Svartem Lechem, that's the whole Arichas of the Rebbe. Svartem Lechem, Sfira Sohim is study on your count. That's it's going to be the Gaelic about that too. Oh, sure, but that has nothing to do with your traveling. Of course, it's Negei where Shabbos is, or when Shabbos is. Of course, it's Negei the Dateline. But the traveling through, passing through the Dateline is only Negei the Gabbas Sfira Sohim. Okay, now there is a Gemara. The Gemara is in. So, just as another note, you should know Talmidai Yosef. The greatest job you learn, the best you learn is from Talmidim. Take a look at Machaya, how much I could learn from. I gave this shiur 15 years ago, and there was a Talmud over here in the yeshiva. His name is Yosef Barber, and lives in Crown Heights. And he went off to Australia to become a shliach in Australia. And he decided to do the same thing. I would give a shiur in Klolium, and he decided for the Bachram Day to do the same thing. So he took the first shiur that I gave on Kavatayich and Dateline, and he sat down for hours and hours. It's a very lengthy and in-depth discussion, and he went through a lot, and he wrote down a whole pamphlet about it, which is much more detailed than as I said at that time. And since then, since I have this many years, I actually follow his booklet, and it makes clear everything very clearly written out. So a lot of things is taken from this booklet by now. The Gemara says yeah. Das habe ich nicht gesagt zu dir live. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf. The Gemara says that in order to make it Shchedish, you need to have the new moon, the Meilet, should be in the beginning of the day. So you have the whole night and the whole day belonging to the new Chodesh. Yeah, it has to be the night and the day has to belong to the new Chodesh. That's one halach in the Gemara. Then there's the next halach in the Gemara is that the Lavon is niskasa for 24 hours. You can't see. Now I'm not going to elaborate this. We did this in Kiddush HaChedesh. That we know when the Meilet means that when the earth, the moon, and the sun are lined up, so the moon blocks itself from our view, because the sun is shining from above onto the upper half of the moon. We're standing from below, so we only see the dark side of the moon. We don't see the lit side. That's called the kibbutz. That's the moment of the Meilet. Even though it's called Meilet, that's the moment that the moon disappears totally. But then slowly it moves outside from between the world and the sun. Slowly you can start seeing tiny slivers of the moon. It takes 24 hours to be able to see the moon. Because half of it is, when it's before, it's too close to the moon from this to the sun to this side, and it's not enough visible from this side after the moilet. So it takes 24 hours.
Just an interruption, we shouldn't forget Kiddush Levana tonight for those.
Yes, the last night. So the Baal HaMaor explains this Gemara as follows. It's a little difficult to follow if you don't look. It's a long Baal HaMaor, but this is the only shitta in the Rishonim. And there's many Rishonim who wrote about astronomy, but in Gemara, in Halacha, we Pesach talk. It's come out the only shitta the Rishonim will talk about this in Halacha. So he teaches this Gemara as follows. So the Gemara says, based on these two shitta, based on these two klalim, that you need to have the moilet has to be, the new moon has to be a whole day. If you have less than 24 hours, you can't make the new Chedesh. The other halacha, the other klal is that the moon is not visible for 24 hours. Based on this, as the Gemara third klal, halacha, that if you have a moilet, which any moilet, when the moilet happens the second before 12 o'clock by day, you could make it a Chedesh. If the moilet happens the second later after Chatzos, it's called a moilet zoking, an old moilet, too late, discarded. You can't make it a Chedesh this day, you have to make it a Chedesh the next day. Explains the Baal HaMaor. Eretz Yisrael, now let's go into the map. Eretz Yisrael is standing about 90 degrees west of the beginning of the main land mass of the upper hemisphere. In other words, China is the end in the latitudes. By the way, there are other names. The lines running this way are called longitude. The lines running this way are called the latitude. So the world is divided in 360 degrees this way and 360 degrees this way, and the lines running in between. The Eretz Yisrael runs on the longitude lines 90 degrees from the end of the main here is China. This is China, and this is, if you take a look, this is the Pacific Ocean, just mainly water. Everything is water, and this is the main land mass of the world, at least known in those days for sure, before we had known about America. And this is the end of the Yishuv Elyon. This is right here where it starts water. Then there's a huge island called Japan. This is Japan. There's a huge island even bigger called Australia. Yeah. So Eretz Yisrael is right over here right over here. This is Eretz Yisrael. Right over here. This point over here is Eretz Yisrael. It's 90 degrees from over here. Take a look, I made my own degrees over there. This is 0 where Eretz Yisrael is. Now I'm going till 90. See 90? Goes right here at the end of China. Mamish. Smack right there. And therefore, says the Baal HaMaor, now if you have 12 o'clock in Eretz Yisrael, what time, it's 12 o'clock, let's pick a date, let's pick Shabbos. 12 o'clock, middle of the day on Shabbos. And the moilet happened. A second before. What time is it now at the beginning of China?
6 p.m.
Huh? Which, we remember that anything which is more east happened already. Yeah? Yeah, so in China is what? At 6 p.m. of which day? It's Motzei Shabbos, 6 p.m. Yeah? Correct? We don't have an international dateline yet. So anything which we look at east, we live in Eretz Yisrael, we look at east, what do we call it? It happened already. So if I'm Chatzos Hayom on Shabbos, I look at east, it's 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Motzei Shabbos, it happened already. Shabbos is the end. I'm 12 o'clock in the middle of the day.
We're talking about 6 Yom HaShav. That's a
Yom HaShav. So Yom HaShav. So now it's 6 p.m. of Shabbos afternoon. What is 1 inch further east? 1 inch further east, what is that? 5:59 of which day? If we would call this now, let's declare this right now. I'm declaring it the international dateline. So So what is over there?
Never happened yet. It's Friday afternoon.
It's Friday afternoon around 6 p.m. Okay, it's at 6 p.m. It's a half an inch move, yeah? It's 6 p.m., but it's 6 p.m. Friday night. Correct? If that's the international dateline. It's for 6 p.m. Friday night. Now, says the Baal Amor, this is Pshat in Gemara. Now watch. It will take 24 hours that the moon should be visible. Yeah? So, 24 hours later, in Eretz Yisrael, will be Sunday, 12 o'clock. What would be 1 inch after the international dateline? Will be the last minute of Shabbos. So, Adam, so we have two halachas now. The Adam could see, because the moon could only be visible 24 hours later. It's still Shabbos, it's a minute before Shkia, it's getting dark enough, so Adam could chaparayim to see the Levana the last second. So you have now two things together. Two Adam were able to pick up in one place in the world. Two Adam would be able, in concept, pick up the moon the last second of Shabbos. But also, when did the Moiled really happen? The Moiled is the kibbutz, not the seeing. The visualizing is 24 hours later. But the actual Moiled happened when?
24 hours.
It was 12 o'clock in Eretz Yisrael, which really was what? Which was the beginning, which is the beginning of, in the other half, you're going to have a place where you're going to have about 24 hours of the new Moiled. Because an inch after the dateline just started Friday night. When it's 12 o'clock in Eretz Yisrael, an inch after China, just started Friday night. And now, so till you're going to see the moon, which is 24 hours later, you have a full 24 hours, a full new moon, a full day, not a full moon, a full day of 24 hours of the moon. It's not so easy. It's a very long. The Baal Amor makes klolim and protim, and he divides, and he shows you. You can see even for them, it wasn't so easy for people to pick up geography and these types of things. Even if you didn't follow this, you could continue perfectly to follow the rest of the shir. Do not get discouraged because of this. Okay? So this is based on the types of the Baal Amor in this Gemara. Whether you understand it or not, you could sit down tomorrow and study the Baal Amor, or come ask me. So, based on this, that's where the dateline is, based on this Gemara. Rashi teaches the Gemara differently. According to Rashi, it has no relationship with the dateline. Tosfos teaches the Gemara differently, has no connection to international dateline, has nothing to do with the international dateline. So, between Achreinim is the Pshat, that the places in Rashi are cholik in the Baal Amor. In other words, is the Baal Amor taking his halacha based on his pshat in the Gemara? Then Rav Rishonim disagree with him. The Pashanim and the pshat in Gemara, Rashi and Tosfos don't learn like him. Then that's not the pshat. Or the pshat is no. That's what he knew from before, from as a kid. That's the known. That's the fact. At the Arayim, teach the Gemara like that. And if Rashi and Tosfos disagree, doesn't mean that they disagree where the international dateline is. They never said where there is. So let the Bachlava Machlekes and the Achreinim, what would Rashi and Tosfos hold? But Akapanim, the Baal Amor, and so they say that Yudah Levi, the Kuzri, also follows this thing. So we have here one shitta. The international dateline is 90 degrees of Yerushalayim. It's right over here. And which is the beginning of the landmass Keneged Yerushalayim, which is the beginning of China. Now this only explains, because the Gemara, based the way he teaches the Gemara, but what's the reasoning behind it? We see this, an outcome from the Gemara, that's at Hilchos Kiddush HaChedesh, that you see in the beginning of the world, over there you have a full day of the moon. But why is that the beginning? The new moon, when the new moon happened, there was a place in the world which was 6 in the evening. The kibbutz happens in different places. Yes, right? Yeah. So, yeah. So, b'meila kum teisaseh. But what's the reasoning behind it? So they say the Gemara says that Eretz Yisrael is called Tibur Ha'aretz. Eretz Yisrael is called the navel of the universe, the high point. Now we know that if you take a ball, there's no high point. It goes around and around, you know. Now, obviously, we're not talking about how much it descends, the degrees from the ocean sea level, because they're higher mountains than Eretz Yisrael. So it's not the highest point in terms of sea level. Obviously, the Gemara means it's the centrality. It's the central point. And if you take a ball and you tell me how to hold the ball, the central point is the top of the ball. So which means Chazal considered Eretz Yisrael as being the centrality. Why? So the Pashas, the Shitta wants to explain, is because if you start 90 degrees from over here, which the earth begins, and then you continue, the middle point, 180, is half of a ball. So if you continue 90 degrees, that's the middle. 180 would be the other end. Considering that Chazal looked at Yishuv Elyon, so to speak. That others people try to refute, because that means Chazal didn't know geography. There's another side of the world Dafka begins there, whatever. Others want to say it's because, based on the Medrash, the Rebishter hung up the sun on Yerushalayim at 12 o'clock. So that became the central. Right away, when you had the sun, until Yom Revi, steht in Pasuk, Vahi Erev Vayivoker Yom Echad. What made Vahi Erev, what made Voker? Vayemer Hashem Yehi Oyer, Vayemer Elokim Yehi Oyer. And there was Oyer. And there was Cheshach. And there was 12 hours Oyer, 12 hours Cheshach. There was no sun. The Me'oyers were hung up on Wednesday. So till Wednesday, it was 12 hours day, 12 hours night, all over the world. That had nothing to do with sun. And all of a sudden, Wednesday, Hashem changed and said from now on, you'll count Yomim, you'll count Oisus and Ma'adim, all based on the sun. So the Rebbe said hung in the sun above Eretz Yisrael, 12 o'clock. How much did it cover at each time? And the sun is on top of, how much does it cover from the globe? 180 degrees. Which means the sun went, if the sun was hung right here in Eretz Yisrael, it covered up till here and up till here. That means this saw already sunlight. So this became, even though 2 minutes later was Shkia there. Yeah? Because the sun is here. So 2 minutes later, that's Shkia. But it saw light for 1 second. That was Wednesday. So therefore, that's the beginning. And if the sun will get back there next day, well, it'll have to be next day already. If you had a day already. Yeah? So that's the explanation of the Kuzris Mahalach. Yeah. Based on this, a Talmud of the Rosh, he made a sefer called Yisod Eilam, and he tightness of this, he says it's a chuchiklu. It's mamish and shayach. He says it's impossible. Two people live over here. Take a look over here. The line goes straight over here. Two people living over here, and one goes to the other person and gets Shalom Aleichem Agut Shabbos, and the other guy will answer you Agut Tevach. Because he's a half a foot different. How can you have a Dateline right smack in the middle of the city? Huh? So, yeah, but that's the day. But talking according to this Dateline, how can you have that? So he says it's mamish about sunnahs. It's impossible. So came the Chazon Ish, and he is very strong for the Shitta of the Baal HaMoyer. He's one of the few who accepted this very strongly. And he says, "Was gibt es a charetza mit dem Problem?" So he says it's not based on the sun. Because if it's based like I just explained now, because the Medrash says the sun was hung up above Eretz Yisrael, so the line is a very straight line. Wherever you had sun was Wednesday. Wherever didn't have sun yet was only Tuesday. It will become tomorrow Wednesday. You'll have to wait 24 hours till it gets Wednesday. Yeah? If that's the case, the line is a very sharp razor. This was the line. This is it. This is where the sun went. This is it. So you have a kasha. He says it's not totally in that. It's based on Yishuv Elyon, it's based where Eretz Yisrael is the center, and therefore 90 degrees of that east is the beginning, 90 degrees of that is the end. And B'meila, that's only Kineged Eretz Yisrael. Right here is Kineged, where the landmass begins here. But Elochanam, he calls it Greira. All of this is Nimshach after this. Because Eretz Yisrael is the centrality, is the middle. And if over here, this is the beginning, so of course the same landmass, all of this is nigrar into being chelik of Eretz Yisrael. So according to the Chazon Ish, he follows intrinsically in Shitta Be'etz and the Shittas HaBaal HaMoed, but he changes it with it that really, if you want to ask somebody where is the international dateline,
Sure.
is the shoreline, is the line of, what do you call it,
Pacific Ocean shore.
the boardwalk. Yeah, the Pacific Ocean, whenever it goes in and out, that's the beginning of the days. So the Rebbe takes very strong issue with that.
Next, according to Chazal, you should be standing in the water.
Yeah,
Different day.
yeah, different day, exactly.
So if you want to jump and not have Shabbos, you can
Yeah.
Shabbos on the boat.
You can do that according to all shittas, depending where it is. Yeah, so, huh? Okay, so according to Australia, now follow this, 90 degrees, here it is. Australia has a line right in the middle. Based on the Chazon Ish, the Rebbe says that based on the Chazon Ish, Australia would be part of, what do you call it, part of the East, not part of the West, yeah? East is the beginning, it would be part of Eretz Yisrael, this is called the East. It would be part of the East, and that's the way the Goyim also count there today, yeah? This is all part of this, because according to the Goyim, this is the international dateline, so all of this is part of the East, yeah? However, the Rebbe says that we know that day and night is dependent on what? On Shkia. Shkia makes the next day. Yeah? It says the sun. Yeah? So how can it be that this, why is this negative after this? When it becomes a new day over here, it's a new day because the sun now disappeared, or shone up, or in the morning, whatever, based on the sun. And this is thousands of miles further west. And this is, again, this should be based on its own sun when it gets its own shkia. How is that shkia dependent on this shkia? Besides that, I didn't see the Rebbe's letter so clearly. Maybe it is, but I didn't. Like this now, I didn't see it. Is you're going to have over here like this. Since these are all little islands, correct? No, I'm not blocking anybody. These are all little islands. So you would have like this. This Australia up till here, way past Melbourne. This is all considered east. So this is Shabbos. And it's way further west. But this over here, because it's not connected to the mainland, it's an island. So this, which is really way further west, this is still a day earlier. You know, how does that work? It doesn't make any sense. So, well, we'll discuss Andrew Rush.
It's one of
So-
the only places that ever brings the Chazon Ish, right?
Yeah.
This hand the tzaddik,
Huh?
this is the backwards view of the tzaddik in the Zohar.
Yeah. So, this is the first shitta, okay? Second shitta. Second shitta is from Rabbi Aharon Gancz.
So what is the Yisod Day? What's the Sefer called?
Huh?
Talmud Rosh. What's his shit?
Yisod
What is he like?
Doilam. He has an interesting shitta, different shitta, 114, whatever. The Rebbe doesn't bring it. The Aharon Gancz Sefer HaYomam, he brings a shitta. That his shitta is that Eretz Yisrael is the centrality of the universe. So let me just explain to you before, let me go back a little bit. In the 1800s, when all the Goyim came together, how did they decide? So you decide to a centrality. And that's called a meridian. A meridian means basically a line that cuts to a longitude. But there's the zero meridian, there's the main meridian, and then there's the 180 meridian. So the main meridian is where the centrality is. Therefore, 180 degrees of that is the beginning and the end. Clear? So the Goyim decided that this is where every map begins. This is zero over here, which is in Greenwich. Over here, Greenwich is a city in London, in England, next to London. And that's where Greenwich is. That's called the prime meridian. What's such prime? The main. The central point, zero. And therefore, 180 degrees of that, which is this line, is where the international date line is. That's the 180 meridian. Yeah? So Rabbi Aharon Gancz came with the same chachma as the Goyim did, lahavdil, and he said to us, Eretz Yisrael is prime meridian. That's called centrality. That's the smack in the middle, but not just of upper Yishuv Elyon, or the center of the Yishuv Elyon. Chazal knew of everything, the whole world, the whole globe. In Bemela, 180 degrees of Eretz Yisrael, of Yerushalayim, that's where is the international date line. Like the Goyim did with Greenwich, he did with Yerushalayim. If that's the case,
Opposite Yerushalayim, the other side.
yeah, opposite. So this is this over here. This line is the international. This line is the international date line, which is, let's look over here. This is zero. We have now. This is the Greenwich. This is the Goyish zero. Lahavdil. This is according to Rabbi Aharon Gancz. This is the zero. This is Yerushalayim. Go 180 from over here, which comes out 180 over here. Yeah. So this is 180 of B'chil Mechel. Now, according to him, it would be like this, that Australia is no problem whatsoever. It belongs to Eretz Yisrael. Japan, all these islands, New Zealand, all of them are no problems. They all belong to Eretz Yisrael, they're all east. Because this is where east begins. Until there, the other side is the western side. This is all the eastern side. And therefore Japan and all of this belongs to the east. That's all the way they go and keep. However, the problem is over here is a little island called Hawaii. Hawaii is right over here. Hawaii is right. No, let me find it. It's right over here. This is Hawaii. This is Hawaii. Now the international dateline works perfectly. Hawaii is part of America. It belongs to this sovereign country. So B'meila, of course, it's the last, it's the end of America. They call it the last place. This is the end of the West. So international dateline calls it that way. This is international dateline. So, but according to B'chil Mechel, this is the line, then Hawaii, it really is where the date begins, was already. So when they call it Shabbos, yeah, when the Goyim call today Shabbos, what is it really?
Sunday.
It's already Sunday. That means they have to keep their Friday. So they, according to B'chil Mechel, they have to keep Friday Shabbos. Yeah. Alaska is the same idea, based on this. However, let me preface something. When the Goyim made this, in the beginning they made a straight line. There was not that much commerce, and it was not that big of a difference. As countries developed more and more, they started to see a problem. Here, according to this goes through the middle of Siberia, middle of Russia. Yeah, cuts through the middle of land. It can be. So if you see how it works over here, it goes in. So they decided it's arbitrary. It's not Torah. It's just commerce. You decide whatever you want. So they went up and down to cut out little tiny islands here, so it should be all universal and all worked out. So that's how over here also they're cutting out other, it goes back and forth. However, Rabbi Mechel is besupik. He says the main thing where it can't be a chuchik lila is where it's connected to Eretz Yisrael, the main line. Over here, so over here we say, what? That this is Tibur Aretz, this is the centrality, and therefore 180 degrees is the meridian of Yom V'Layla. However, here is far away from Eretz Yisrael, and over here, if it makes a problem cutting through Alaska, you turn. He's Mesupik in that. He's more noita maybe to say even that it does turn around there too, but he doesn't have a clone array of this.
Japan, we got to talk about Japan.
Yeah, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. 1 second. Yes? So, then came the Shitta of the Bnei Tzion, Rav Shapiro.
Where's Japan? Which side is it?
Japan is right over here. This is Japan.
So both of them it's over here.
Yeah, according to these both Shittas is over here, but according to the Kuzi, Balamor, and the Chazon Ish, this is part of the West.
That was the Machlokes.
Yes, we'll talk about that in a second. So now, there's a third Shitta, which is the Shitta's Bnei Tzion, Rav Shapiro. He came up with a brilliant idea. We know, we said before in the Medrash that they used to hang the Mo'iris on top of it, it's all 12 o'clock. You look into Morgan Avram, Hilchas Shchedish, and there's also the Mefarish of the Rambam, in the beginning of Hilchos Deis, in the beginning, so the Mefarish of the Rambam brings a tradition. Sefer HaBoy, he brings a tradition, and as we know, that the first kifa that took place, that the first moment that Eibush Tatogang is going 9 o'clock in the morning. That's why it says in Shulchan Aruch, Morgan Avram, that if you do every 28 years, we know we make Kiddush, a Chedish, which means, what does that mean? What is every 28 years? What does that mean? Why is Birchas Hachama 28 years? Because it only comes out once in 28 years that the Tkufas Nissen, which means the beginning of when Hashem hung up the Me'oris, to come out on a Wednesday. It keeps on different days, whatever it is. Whatever the Eibush Tatogang hung in, whatever it is, it comes back again to Wednesday. So it says over Morgan Avram that the Welt is knowing that we only do Birchas Hachama up till 9 o'clock. Because 9 o'clock was that, the Kufa, that's the Eibush Tatogang. Was ich steht there. And it's brought in Halacha. This is nicht, it's nicht kein Rishon, but it's a tradition brought in Halacha, L'maisa, for Kiddush Hachama, Birchas Hachama, yeah? If a mailer, now follow this, Chadra. This is Geschmack. If this is Eretz Yisrael, and it's 9 o'clock over here, you tell me where was your sun hung up? Wednesday morning.
45 degrees.
Beautiful. 45 degrees east of Eretz Yisrael, because 90 degrees is 6 o'clock in the morning. If you want Eretz Yisrael should be 9 o'clock, I'm sorry, yes, 9 o'clock, yeah? 9 o'clock means the sun is not above you, that's 12. The sun is not at the horizon, that would be 6 hours. It's 3 hours. So that's 90 degrees, that's 45 degrees. So if the sun was hung up, if it Eretz Yisrael, which is 0, if that's where it's now 9 o'clock, where's the sun hung up? 45 degrees. Where's 45 degrees? Right? Over here. Now if the sun is 45 degrees, yeah? Now where did the sun go till?
135.
135 east of Yerushalayim, which is almost right here. Take a look. Yeah, this is 140, this is 145 of Yerushalayim. This is 135, this is 135, and over there is 145. That's the Lashon of the Rebbe, 145. Yes? How is that? So the Benetzia says Givaldi. What makes day and night?
Starts to get light.
Does Shkia make day and night? Or Tzeisak Yechav? No machlekes. L'chal day Shkia is Ben Hashmoshes. Ben Hashmoshes are suffering. Tzeisak Yechav is what Laila becomes. The machlekes is, when is Tzeisak Yechav? Is it the Giyonim half an hour after, or is it 72 minutes? That's the machlekes. Tzeisak Yechav makes night. Now we know that Tzeisak Yechav happens to be around a half an hour. A half an hour. What is Tzeisak Yechav? What is the difference between Shkia and Tzeisak Yechav? That means the sun already descended, was set. Nevertheless, the sun shines in still from underneath the horizon, and you can still see light, therefore you don't see stars yet. So Tzeisak Yechav. Hey, Stas, the sun was hung up at 45. The sun was shining up to 135. But what was there after 135 to 145? Huh? That is Ben Hashmoshes. That's still day. So he said, Oy bazoi, he feels, and you could get some goosebumps from that, as he said, yes. He says, Leiv chachamim v'sorim b'yad Hashem. Whatever the Goyim did for convenience, set countries, 25 countries, deciding where it should be, as we cooked up them Medrash, then Magen Avraham, and that Mefarish and the Rambam. Based on this, that's exactly where the first day this sun was lighting till where. The Rebbe, it actually comes out, if you make a cheshbon, according to the Alter Rebbe, that we, in certain places it's less than 7 degrees, then it's only 7 degrees, so it shouldn't be 145, it should be 142, 143, but based on what he's explaining over here, we know Eretz Yisrael is about 30 degrees above the equator. Anytime you go higher in the equator, it goes longer and longer. In Eretz Yisrael, if you live in Eretz Yisrael, 20 minutes after Shkia it's dark. Yeah. Almost. The winter Valada. Yeah. Very, very fast. Why? Because in Eretz Yisrael, and maybe I'll explain this later, I don't want to take time. The further you go up or the further you go down, the twilight is longer. Twilight means Ben Hashmoshes. Longer, of course. Over here it's not fully dark. When we daven Ma'ariv, when we do Melachos, it's not fully dark. 72 is fully dark. In Eretz Yisrael, by far, it's totally dark. Because it's closer to the equator. So B'meileh, connected to Eretz Yisrael, it's not already by the equator. There it takes a little more than a half an hour or something like that. So that's the cheshbon why it's 145. What happens with cutting through Siberia? So he said, because the further you go up and up and up, Ben Hashmoshes is longer and longer. So B'meileh, punkt with the Goyim turn their line, their curve, and it goes further away, and it goes smack right in the middle between Alaska and Siberia. That's exactly, if you follow the tzeiss, you'll see the line going up curves, and the line going down also curves. Ma'ariv kommt is Punktwort, like Mamish Leben Lachem V'Sodim B'Yad Hashem. This is exactly the international day.
How about in the water?
Huh? In the water, it's very interesting. I don't know what beer, and that the Rebbe says in the Pasuk is nish klor. What's happening while you're in a boat or in a plane? Is there such a concept? Which bothers me because on the one hand, it looks like this is a Menachem Kasher shita. It looks like on mainland we know depends where the people traveled. Coming from east, come to west. In the middle of the ocean, there's no people living there. That's how it sounds from the Rebbe. It's not clear. But the Rebbe clearly didn't even mention the Menachem Kasher shit at all. He brings the other three shittas, never mentions that shitta. So now no mabir, the Migdal Uklarap and Migdal Uyvarich. Why? In the middle of the ocean, still you can't be keveya because it's not a landmass. People don't live there. So maybe even if it's this side or that side, it doesn't have. You can't change a date in the middle of it's not a yishuv. Okay. Now follow this. Now comes the punchline of this whole shir. In the time of the war, we all know that there were a whole group of Chassidim and Litvish Shabachar who all traveled to Shanghai. Everybody knows that. There's a whole Babish Yeshiva in Shanghai. At one point, they had to run away from Shanghai also. They were pushed them back and forth, and they had to go over to Kobe, Japan. This is Japan away. Kobe, Japan. Now, according to the Baal HaMoed and to the Chazon Ish, that's going to be the day, next day is going to be whatever the day is. Not what the Goyim keep. So according to the Goyim, this is the national dateline, and this is part of Eretz Yisrael, part of Asia, Europe. According to the Baal HaMoed, the Chazon Ish, this is the end of Yishuv Oil. This belongs to the end of the world. It's going to be next day. That year, Yom Kippur came out on a Wednesday. Until Yom Kippur, there were many Bacharim, I don't know, Lubavitch or others, who did, some chose the Shabbos and some chose the Sunday. Not to do any malachas, neither the Isis nor the Rabbanos. The other day, they didn't do the Isis, they did only the Rabbanos, in order to survive. But they were machal pashut. Shabbos, okay, you could live with learning a little more and doing less malachas. So you didn't cook, big deal. Came Yom Kippur, you have to fast 2 days. So they wrote a very fast telegram to Eretz Yisrael to ask all the Rabbanim, what are we doing? So 2 telegrams came back. One was from the chief rabbi, Rabbi Herzog. He convened many Rabbanim, and they didn't come to a full conclusion, but most of the opinions were not to change the way it's done, the way the Goyim keep, to keep the way the Goyim. And there was a very strong telegram went back, fast on Wednesday. Nobody dared to be machmir, as foolish as Shulchan Aruch, not to fast 2 days, but tzat tzveikis, pekuach nefesh. The Chazon Ish sent back a telegram, fast, eat Ichlu B'Revi, Tzumu B'Chamishi, and do not consider any other opinions. That was his answer. Yeah. Lepoyel Dreibish to geholfen, that a few days before Yom Kippur, they already went back all to China. So the question never was, it was never implemented, Lepoyel Mamish, what they were doing. But that was the discussion then. In Sefer Kavat Aracha Yisraeli from Menachem Kasher, which he makes a kitzur of all the other shittas as well, he discusses all the other shittas. He brings a letter based on a Sefer called Latest Shabbos or something. He brings a quote that the Lubavitcher Chassidim on Gefreg the Frierdiker Rebbe what to do, and he answered Chas v'Shalom to change of what people keep in that place. No beer, no what, no Chas v'Shalom to change. Now, based on this, the shaila is, what is the shit of the Frierdiker Rebbe? You could say that he holds, like Rebbe Mechel Tiketzinski, that Eretz Yisrael is the centrality, 100 native Eretz Yisrael. So B'Meila, Japan, Australia, all these belongs to, just, in other words, not like the Chazon Ish, not like the Kusari, not like the Baal HaMoed, that's it. But, which one is it? Is it the national day plan? Or maybe no, maybe B'Chil Mechel, which is a Teiridike shita. Yeah? We don't know. So Kum Tois, according to this letter, what should we do in Hawaii? What should we do in Alaska? Not clear. Yeah? From the Rebbe, there is no clear thing about this. But the Rebbe does talk about Australia. There's a letter from the Rebbe, you can look it up, it's in Shulchan Menachem. The Rebbe says in Australia, says the Rebbe, since these 2 shittas say that this belongs to the east part of Eretz Yisrael, this is how you follow. And the Rebbe says in the third shitta, which is anyway a das yachid, you shouldn't need that next. And the Rebbe says like this. And even according to the other shitta, which is a das yachid, because it has greater, it has the line in the middle. So even according to that shitta, it belongs. But then the Rebbe says, but nevertheless, it's only a das yachid, but that's a geschrechen in it. I'm not going to make pilpulim now. So what would you say? We'll take 3 more minutes. Don't rush off. It's the bottom line of the shir. So what would you say based on the Rebbe's shitta? Which shittas are prominent? Which shittas are disregarded? Chazon Ish is disregarded. Or you can say the Balamor is disregarded. The Rebbe says clearly, based on those 2 shittas, Australia is part of Eretz Yisrael, it's east. Even according to the other shitta, we say greater, it's also. Yeah? Oy Bazoi, Kumtois, the Rebbe said, all I know is what? That Australia, I know for sure what to do. What do I do in Hawaii? What do I do in Western? Between the Michel and the Brexit. We don't know. Yeah? And this is how he writes over here also that he had a big discussion with one of the Litvish Rabbanim that he's very upset. He wrote a whole sefer in Kavatayich, and he's very upset why Lubavitch keeps in Hawaii, in Alaska, the same as the Goyim. He says, based on your Rebbe's letter, that should be a suffix. All the Rebbe said was that the Chazan, we don't follow the Balamai. But he did not make any achra and the 2 other shittas. And therefore you should, However, he's not finished yet. He has a whole discussion with him based on his way of learning Pshat, the Rebbe's letter was.
Responding to a lot of Rabbanim, this guy.
Yeah.
Emailed a few years
And-
back and forth.
Yeah.
Someone put me on the correspondence, back and forth.
And then they called me also, and I told him to go to Rabbi Barber, because he wrote about it, the whole Aricha. So he went to him, and Taken and I was corresponding. So he brings them over here. So that's his main Halacha. Was that the Rebbe is a klor, not like the Balamor, not like the Chazon Ish. The other 2 shittas are wasted. But he says, no, that's not the Pshat. The Rebbe, he says like this, why did the Rebbe bring only 3 shittas? There are 5 shittas, they're more detailed. The Rebbe doesn't even bring them. So apparently, the Rebbe Galtman did these 3 shittas are fundamental, which have explanations in Torah, even though there's like Mechamtishal Torah, of course people argue, but the Rebbe say this. Fast you say this. This is Magen Avraham, this is the Medrash, and this is the Balamor. 3 shittas in Torah. Yeah? The others, the Rebbe didn't bring. So Elamai, the Mishnah Pshat that the Rebbe disregarded the Balamor. It's not the Pshat. What the Rebbe is saying is, since we don't know, that's how he learns Pshat. What do you do in a case when you have a Sveikid Deraisa? When it's Chad Bechad, when it's 1 against 1, when you do Sveikid Deraisa L'chumra. But if you have 2 against 1, Achri Rabim, Mahatim. If that's the case, the Rebbe's opinion is what? That you should do every place where you go after Reif. So no matter where you live in the world, if you follow the international Dateline does, you always have 2 shittas. Because if you go to Japan, what do you have? You have these 2 shittas. If you go to Australia, you also have these 2 shittas. If you go here to Hawaii, and according to him, it's the east, but according to him and the Balamor, so that's the difference between him and that Litvish that he wants to try and know that Rebbe disregarded the Balamor, Chazon Ish and Gancz, and then he's staying with his fake the Raisa. Yeah? Based on this, is the Rebbe didn't say that clearly. He says, when the Rebbe says the Das Yochid, the Rebbe meant the Chazon Ish, not the Balamor. Because he wanted the greater. That why should I discuss this shitta that even according to the Balamor, because it has a line in the middle, that's a Das Yochid. Let's not discuss, let's not get into that. This is good enough the 2 other shittas hold against it, and that's why I make it. But Nisha the Balamor was cast aside. In Mamela, always, based on this, you can say that's also the beer and the Friediger Rebbe sense. However, that's what I wanted you to say because it's very important. There were Chassidim, living Chassidim who lived in Shanghai, who were there at the time. It's not a history of 500 years. And Rav Reichik, Yolav Shalom was there, Rav Finkel was there. And nobody of them has that Kabbalah of the Friediger Rebbe's answer. So it seems like, by now, it seems like refuted, and everybody believes it's concocted someplace where it came up. King of Estish. Einefei brings the name of one of the Chassidim that he asked them openly, which is still alive, and he asked them, was gedenkst du? klar, ihr wisst nicht, was sagt, kein Bund nicht gewinnt, also Heira. And based on this, so I called up Shluchim. I called up Shliach from Alaska, and I called up the Shliach from Hawaii. I asked the Shliach from Alaska, when did you go out there? Was it before Gimel Tammuz or before noon days, after noon days? He says it was way before noon days. So I went out to Ches. So I said, so did you ask the Rebbe? How do you? So this is the Chassidish man said. He told me, ich kenne den Rebbe. The Rebbe is sehr afromer. If I would ask the Rebbe would tell me I can Alaska for it. So I think it's shame. Will you go there every day of your life with it? Aber ich weiß nicht, the Kavanah is enough for Masliach in every place. You need. So I went to ask Rabbi Aharon, and they based it mainly on the Friedrich Rebbe's answer. Friedrich Rebbe was a vague answer. Chas v'sholom l'shanos, which means whatever, for whatever reason that is, whether based on the Svaras we said, whatever. So based on this, he got. So later, this is refuted. This answer of the Friedrich Rebbe never existed. But you can still say, based on the Rebbe's letter, you can still say the same idea that we go after Reif. No, the one who makes for Pesach, Blumenkrantz. He writes in his book, the Yakis who go there in Hawaii a lot, they keep 2 days Shabbos. And interesting, they go for vacations a lot there. And it's a vacation, not only 1 day.
I don't think left too much give him stay there over Shabbos.
Manish. But he writes, Pashtus Yidden feels that Menik HaMokim, some Chlikas in the Sheinem, Menik HaMokim, there's only Yiddish, the community is Chabad. Chabad keeps away, that's how you keep. Finish. That's how he writes. He also writes, Chabad al-Chumre, best will machen, on the game, but if you're there, this is what you keep. So B'meila, I don't remember, he answered me, but nobody got a direct answer. I spoke also to Kaziansky. He also told me he didn't get an answer from the Rebbe. I asked him they should look up if they got any Friday letters that they wrote to the Rebbe. The Rebbe would pick up exactly on those things. He says, of course I don't have such a thing. I would know, I would remember. But Al Kaponim, so there's no clear hero from the Rebbe. Well, that's what the literature wants to taina, that who says the Lubavitch Rebbe holds what he holds. But Al Kaponim, Rabbi Azdeva, and they said, whatever they based it, they told them clearly to keep it the way the international dateline is, and that's how they keep it. And this is how he explains, based on the concept of Reuv. But his argument with that literature in German is based on the decision Landesnazimus, and I'm not going to go into this, but the Reuv, you have 2 Rishonim in 2 different times, and they were not sitting together. There was no sitting in a bezin. So is that considered a Reuv? Can you go after such a Reuv? It's not called a Reuv. It is like equal suffix by the Reisa, the Reisa, we got a Shabbos in Kippur, that is not considered a Reuv. Well, you can't follow such a shit. It's an equal suffix if you don't know, whatever. So that's the discussion about this thing. So that's the Amamish on a Kuda, because this is pages and pages and pages and pages of Rayas, Lakana, Lakama. That's the Kuda, and that's the Kuda how the Shluchim do it based either on the Friedrich Rebbe's letter or based on his look, that is Reuv Rishonim that I follow, and then based the idea that the Rebbe didn't say for sure we don't pass like the Balamar. It's also one shitta. It's a shitta in Torah. Now, because then we go after Reuv always. So either we have the Balamor with the Bnei Tzion, or we have the Chilmechel with the Bnei Tzion, and that makes the Pshara always that you follow like the Welt Vierzach. Well, the Rebbe helps the Bekar of Mamish, that Mishav Mashiach, he will decide exactly where it is, and